from LinkedIn. So then we can test that as a user on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
कि आवाज आ रही है
I'm
कि
doing it. It says के 3 मिनट के बाद
नहीं।
आवाज
Okay.
जाएगी because वो 5 minutes 5 o'clock schedule होगा ना, सर अभी तो मैंने सारा कर दिया इंटीग्रेट, बट आवाज का जो है ना 5 बजे ही पता चलेगा.
बस ठीक है, ओके, तो चेक कर लेंगे. I will send the recording after the post to both of you. And obviously then, so that you can cut and paste as you wish. And we'll do the same.
Cool. I found a very good reel maker.
Oh, that's
AI
good.
reel. It's
Oh,
really
what's
good.
it called?
It's called Video with a Y. VIDYO.AI, I
Oh,
think.
I'm using that. Sajjad, did I not say you? It's worth every penny. She's talking about that only.
But
It's very
you're
good.
saying it's free or is it paid?
I did the free one, huh? I did the free one.
Achha, okay.
Yeah, so the free one has like limits. Like you can only download a certain इतने घंटे का content, इतना 5 मिनट की
Fine,
video whatsoever.
fine,
Fine
fine
by
with
you,
me.
yeah. But हम लोगों
Fine
का
with
जरा
me.
ज्यादा use होता है.
थोड़ा
So
ज़्यादा
we are
usage है
going
तो
for
you
the
have to pay.
premium thing. Yeah, we have to pay.
We
I
should
will eventually.
we should ask AI to create a real video AI for free for us.
That could be done. Who knows?
We should ask
Might be.
ChatGPT के हमें कोड बना के दो एक ऐसे सॉफ्टवेयर
हाँ,
का जो फ्री में हमें ये काम करके दे जो ये कर रहे हैं पेड वाले.
ये तो अच्छा idea. We can do it actually. It shouldn't be difficult.
Yeah, so just need a tech guy who can basically take that code and like run it and see if it works.
I'm very sure हम YouTube देख के खुद ही कर सकते हैं. Tech guy की भी अब जरूरत ना पड़े.
Yeah.
Chat
No,
GPT.
or you can get interns to do it for free. उनको बोलो मैं तुम्हें प्रोजेक्ट दे रही हूँ.
हाँ.
2 महीने का प्रोजेक्ट है ये 15 वीडियोस हैं इनके अब तुम कट बनाओ अलग अलग किस्म के
हाँ.
और टेक्स्ट डालो और सबटाइटल्स डालो and all of that.
That could be cool actually.
Yeah. We're not expecting a lot of people.
50 seconds to go.
Yeah, we're not
Fine.
expecting a lot of
Yes,
people.
yes.
Well, the point is to record and then you use it for our purposes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Are you based in which part of London? Northwest, southwest,
Southwest.
south,
Southwest. Kingston.
southwest? Okay.
Or Kingston.
Oh,
Or
okay.
Kingston.
All right. Yeah. Is that close to the airport?
Relatively, 35-minute drive.
Okay,
Relatively.
that's not bad. Okay.
Hmm.
जो वो 100 VE था वो अब is it not with Unilever? Have they sold it or something?
It's there. They're
But
doing something.
it's still with Unilever or have they sold it? Because I read a news somewhere that they were thinking of selling it or they were selling it.
It's still. It's
Okay.
it's still there. There's a
Okay.
angle to it.
All right.
Should we start now? I think.
I think we
first
wait 2 minutes. Let's check LinkedIn first.
At 5, yes, it is.
Sound okay?
Sound okay.
LinkedIn sound okay?
That's what she's saying. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Hmm.
No, wait.
Acha.
Hold on.
But you will do the intro, right, Sajjad?
Yep, I'll do the intro.
Yes, go on.
All right, the voice is okay for us to start?
Yes.
All right, Sadaf, shall we start?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second chat on with Sadaf, Javed, and today's topic for us is Beyond the Paycheck, Navigating the Chaos of Starting Your Business. Sadaf is a seasoned professional, and more recently, her new adventures have taken her into executive coaching with a niche in it. Sadaf, I'm going to pass it over to you. This is our second conversation on a series of hopefully, chats and conversations, which we will deep dive into interesting topics for viewers. So I'll pass it to you to maybe kick us off and share some thoughts. I know that you have gathered a number of insights and questions from your clients on these interesting topics. So I'll pass it to you to kick us off, and then we'll continue from there.
Sure. Thanks, Sajjad. And yeah, I'm glad I'm here. Clearly, we had a good time first round of our conversation.
Absolutely.
So we're thinking of continuing this as much as we can, and hopefully we can kind of weigh in on some of the opinions of the people who want to hear what type of topics, so we can be a bit more clear about what is it that we want to talk about. But in any case, today's topic, I think it's more about I think I'm going to use it as a therapy session for myself. So if you guys, as in the people who are going to listen to it, benefit from it, good for you. But I think it is more of a way for us to kind of talk as founders and people who are trying to boss ourselves,
Yeah.
to kind of have our own time to talk entrepreneurship and founders dilemma and leadership challenges that we face. And I think one thing is for sure, and I kind of mentioned it in my LinkedIn post when I was kind of trying to talk about this topic, is you really underestimate what type of a human being you have to be when you have to become your own boss, or
Agreed.
become a founder or a CEO or whoever.
Yeah.
Because when we are working in a very comfortable environment for a good 16, 17 years, we learn all the skills. They tell us, you're the brand manager, this is your own business. They try to empower us, we feel empowered. And later on, obviously, we get a bit disillusioned that it's not all of our decisions and whatnot. That's a separate topic. But that versus doing your own thing, you realize that environment that you used to be in was a bubble, complete
Yeah.
bubble. The system was set up, the rules were there, the culture was there, everything was there. You just had to kind of walk in and
Yeah.
just do the job they asked you to do,
Yeah.
assuming you were empowered. But what you realize when you start your own thing is the biggest challenge that you face is inconsistency in results.
Agreed. Makes sense.
And that inconsistency in results has an emotional toll on you as well. And the leaders or the coaches that I've had the opportunity to connect with on this, um, it is impossible to remove professional from personal because it's just too close to them.
Yeah.
So a lot of time they would come to me with trying to delegate better or be better communicators, or how to create a more empowered team, etc., or create a vision for their company. And eventually it goes down to let's fix their problem first, versus the organization, the way it is operated is actually just a system, just a symptom of reactions itself, or it's just an outcome of the founder's concerns and challenges. So the founder has to first kind of be clear in their heads about their values itself, if they want to stay on authenticity itself, if they want to stay authentic. I think that's kind of underestimated, and I've seen also. And I kind of want to hence ask you, Sajjad, because you've been in this for some time now, itself. So do you think it's this whole dream of being an entrepreneur, is it overrated?
So yeah, interesting thoughts from you, Sadaf. I my short answer is yes. I think it's a bit overrated. And let me share a couple of my experiences as well and research as well. I mean, if you go and look at and let's assume that any founder or anyone who starts a company is relatively in what we call a startup phase, right? Is a startup basically. So if you look at the general startup failure rate, right, it is very high, right, then the number is actually ridiculously high. And of course, you can argue that, okay, if you survive 5 years, that's pretty good success already, right? Or you must survive 20 years. And as time goes by, of course, the numbers go down, right? Not every business has, survives 50 years, 100 years, so forth. But I think generally, I think the whole startup bit is a bit overrated. I use this terminology with a lot of actually, in public forums, and with some of the startup founders that I've had to, worked with, or at least had a conversation with, that just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Because it's, for example, like maybe 20 years back, creating a website actually meant a fortune, right? Now you can do it like in 5 minutes online, right? Because the tools are there. You literally buy the domain and the website is yours, right? I think starting a business now, it's become like that, right? It is ridiculously easy for you to just say, oh, I'm going to start selling shampoos, because it's just so much easier. I'll just take it from somebody, I'll repackage it, and I'll create a
Yeah.
website and I'll start selling it, right?
Yeah.
And that applies to, I think, any business. It's just very easy for you to just pick up and start doing a business. Should you do that? I don't think so, right? And I think a few conversations with startup founders, a couple of them have been friends. It sounds very fancy, but to your point exactly, when you have been doing a corporate job, especially. So let's divide those into the younger lot, who just get out of college and then they start their business, and then people like us who already spent, a lot of time in the corporate environment, and you're like, okay, maybe let's try something new. So I think there are two different perspectives. People like us, I think we take a risk, whether it's a personal risk as a professional risk, and I think there are pros and cons to that. People who are very young also take a risk, but it's a different kind of risk, right? They have not yet learned. I'm not going to say they're not smart. I think youngsters are generally 5 times more smarter than, at least I ever was. But I think that there is a value of experience that these, I guess, people miss out when they start something too young, right? And we'll get into a little bit of detail on that later on. But I think the kind of dedication, commitment, and discipline you need to do your own business, I think is very different from getting into a job, because you are absolutely right. Whether you have a crappy job or not, you still have some sort of a bubble that supports you, right? Which when you start your business, and you don't, and I'm going to also divide this into two portions. Somebody like maybe you and me, where we are pretty much bearing the cost of the business, versus somebody who gets a funding from somebody and their life becomes a lot easier. So I'm going to stop there, and let's get some more thoughts from you.
So I want to kind of touch on this topic because it's I'm not saying also, and I think that's not our intention. We're not discouraging people from.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, that's all, folks. Bye bye. Have fun. That's the session. That's a wrap. I think what we're trying to say is also, let's be a bit mentally prepared when you're getting into it. In the past, there were a lot of discussions and a lot of motivational speakers and writers. They would come from a place of privilege. And if somebody is distressed in the role and they're like, I hate my job, their reaction would be like, quit it. Quit.
Yeah.
Quit. Why? Just
Yeah.
follow your passion, do your thing. Yeah. And it just completely comes from a place of privilege, and not realizing that what type of risk are you about to take.
Agree.
In some situations, you are left with no choice but to quit. In some situations, family circumstances demand you to quit. But in a lot of situations, you don't have to quit exactly at the beginning of your founder journey.
Agree.
And that's where now I've seen the conversation is kind of shifting. There are people like Gary Vaynerchuk, I'm butchering his name, and Sahil Bloom, who kind of say very clearly that because they've seen the number of casualties in the
Yeah.
process, and especially the tech side, they have
Yeah.
mental health issues and other abuses that come along with it. So they're seeing it. So essentially, stay in the job, do your recce,
Yeah.
craft it out, see, get some sort of revenue generation coming out of it,
Yeah.
and then eventually see when your passion is giving you more than your current job, then fine,
Yeah.
then maybe take the plunge. Just I would say, just be a bit more conscious of when
Yeah.
you're about to pull the plug. And I really like this. quotation from Ben Horowitz, who wrote Hard Things, How to Do Hard Thing. What's it called? The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Yeah. So that's a book everybody should read, whoever wants to start up. And he says that as a startup of a CEO, I slept like a baby. I woke up every 2 hours and cried.
Oh my God, no, that's extreme.
So
But I
that's
mean, sorry.
go ahead, go
No, but
ahead.
it's yeah, it's spot on in many ways. I think the point you talked about, like don't just jump into it, take some time off, right? As I was, just about to start my own practice, I don't remember their names, but I think there are these two individuals who have done like 3 or 4 startups in the US, and they actually spoke from their experience. They're successful now. I think they're doing their fifth startup right now. And they said that it took us the third startup to realize that if you have an idea and if you have a job, for example, you're thinking of leaving a job and starting your own business, they said wait 2 years. If you
Mm,
decide I want to do something on my own, plan for 2 years, do your job,
mm,
because they were coming from an angle that one of the key things, especially if you're putting your own money, is that you want to be financially independent. I think, and as I speak to more and more startups, and also as I work with them, I think one of the things I realize, and we'll talk about from an HR perspective, absolutely, is that if you don't have that financial leeway for your own self, you might decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to leave my job, I'm going to start my business. Now, no business starts at day one, right? It takes months, sometimes years to kick it off. If you have not planned it and you're going to plan it after leaving your job, it's basically going to take you 1 year, 2 years to just get that product or service out in the market. How are you
mm,
going to sustain yourself for that long? Whether it's 6 months, whether it's 1 year, not everybody's pay is amazing. Everybody has dependents. Everybody has financial
mm,
responsibility.
mm,
Point they were trying to make is that before you jump in, especially if you have a job, take your time, like to your point, research, talk to people, figure out, get the product ready, get an MVP done, figure out if there's a demand of the market, or a product or service or whatever it is that you wanna bring. Who are your competitors? Like spend time, and you won't feel bad because you have your job and you're doing this side by side. You're financially not under pressure. A lot of what people do is they just decide to leave the job, start a business, and in three
mm,
months, of course, no business picks up in 3 months. They realize, oh my God, like I'm basically eating into my savings. And a lot of people don't even have savings, right? And I think that's the point and that's why I said just because you can doesn't mean you should. Means
mm,
like take your time. I'll share another interesting example. I was invited to two different calls. Both actually one was from university and one I forgot. But basically they asked me to be a judge of these kids basically
mm,
pitching their projects, right? Uh, and I would say that I think in total, over the two sessions, I think I must have heard about 22 pitches, right? And I would probably say only one, and again, I'm not an expert in this field, but as a consumer and as a user, there was literally only one product where I thought, okay, I think this is
makes
needed in
sense.
the market, right? And
Mm,
so I think the point is that people just pick up, I want to make this. They don't really spend time thinking through, is it even needed? If I make a new, multicolor spectacles, does it even have a market or not, right? And I
mm,
think that's the part that you have to spend time, research, to your point. Don't just jump into it. Spend time, especially if you have been working. I think it's pretty stupid to just, put an axe on your foot and say, I'm just going to leave my job. Of course, you can leave your job and you can start your business, but you have the time, you have a paycheck coming, you have some security to do that side by side before you really jump into it.
mm. So essentially, what we're saying is do it responsibly.
Yeah, do
Think
responsibility.
through.
Absolutely.
There's no rush unless your circumstances are a bit different. But I think most of the time people might just jump into it, especially the tech startup world, maybe
Yeah,
itself. And I think risk taking is a bit more in their education as well.
agreed.
They see it, and obviously the glory of money is there. And at the same time, because tech moves so fast that if you see an opportunity, you just want to kind of quickly
Agreed.
get into it, because if you sit and wait it out, you lose it. um, but one aspect that becomes quite important also is um, the word that kind of is talked about quite a lot is pivoting. And that's a reality also. Um, and we used to read cases around how products that eventually were successful, they were created out of mistake or were an alternative to the main, and etc etc. And we just got charmed by those stories, never realizing that it might actually happen to us one day.
Yeah.
um, so now there's a lot of conversation around that. As a founder, don't get too obsessed about just one income stream.
Agreed.
um, you can stay in that overall space of what you stand for, but you kind of have to do the look for alternative streams or multiple streams that might eventually get you to the same objective. There are a lot of people who, for example, thought that they might write a book, make something out of it, do something with blogs and get something out of it, but eventually some sort of a newsletter saved them.
Yeah.
And then eventually they wrote a book after the newsletter.
Yeah.
So there are those examples as well of pivoting. But pivoting also uh, comes with some sort of an emotional burden, because you have to be okay with pivoting. um,
Agreed.
and that's where I want to ask you also, that there is a lot of focus on um, conventional success in the form of how much money will I make, revenue generation,
Yeah.
and whatnot. And a lot of times, founders, they might just say, okay, this looks like a good opportunity, I'll be able to make money out of it, and that's it.
Yeah.
Um, but there is might be a little bit focus on, not the same level of focus on, what type of a leader do I want to become while
Yeah.
running a business. Why do you think that happens?
I don't think there's a straight answer. I was just reflecting a few days back. I'm gonna come back to the point I made earlier. Like you get into this, you want to do something. Um, there are people who get, I would say, fortunate when they get money from somebody else to do what they want to do, right? So if they have an idea, they don't
Mm,
even have a product. And as we've seen in the startup world, which I think now has become a lot more conscious and cautious both at the same time. I think till about a couple of years back, it was very easy to get funding, because people and investors and whatever you want to call it, I think they were a lot more open about investing. So if you had a good idea, even though you don't have a product, it was easy to get that money, right? When you have not your money, and again, I say this with respect, you don't own it to that level of responsibility. This is my observation with a few companies that I've heard about, few companies that I have worked with, a few founders that I know personally as well. Uh, if I take you and me as an example, right, where we are self-funded, if I can use that terminology, I think the equation is very different. Or to that extent, those people who are doing it on their own, it might take longer, it might be a lot more painful. Our equation differs from, and I'll be very honest, I tried to go for a funding round end of last year, right? Because I was
mm,
desperate, because things were slow and it was taking
mm,
far too long for my liking. So if I had gotten $500,000 or $1 million, would my life be different? Absolutely. It would make my life a lot easier. Uh, Time to market, building a team, all of that would be very, very, it would help in many, many ways. Now, that doesn't mean that just because I get the money and I do all these things, I'm still gonna, it guarantees me success. It does not, right? Of
mm,
course, a lot of companies get money and then unfortunately, close down. And there are other
mm,
reasons for that. So I think there is no simple equation. Uh, you might be lucky if you launch a product right now.
mm,
You might become unlucky if you do it after 1 year, right?
mm,
I don't think there's an equation that if you use, it guarantees or increases chance of success. Where you are when you launch, who you're working with, what kind of skill set you have. To your point earlier, definitely, because we've spent so much time in the corporate. I think the competencies and skills that are needed to be a founder or an entrepreneur is absolutely very different to an
yeah.
extent from when you're working in a thing, right? This is relentless to an extent, right? Because, and I'll give an example. I took some time off in May and I really wanted some time off after months and months. And I had everything planned out that, okay, I had a couple of my team members, okay, you will take over everything. But then, stuff happened and I was taking calls at like 1 and 3 a.m. and, because of the time zone difference as well. So, you know, definitely, I'm not saying in our jobs, of course, we also have to do that. but it is not as bad as like, because you are the only one, right? You can't rely on anybody else. If you want to make that money, if you want to pay that, you want to get that month's rent, you have to take that call, right? I think it's very relentless that way. And I don't think everybody's cut out for it. And maybe people don't realize that it can get that bad.
And I think the starting point, I'm still in my first year, so it's a bit new itself.
Yeah.
But since because you're in an early stage, I'm in my mind, the way I do it is that for me, at this stage, you shouldn't be very selective. Because you want to eventually get to a situation, because that's the vision, right? You want to eventually get to a situation that you start saying, no, I want to go on that vacation, time off, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't mind being blocked,
Yeah.
chocker blocked related
Yeah.
to work at this
Agree.
stage.
Agree.
And then eventually you aim for that. Uh, However, this part around resilience is kind of what you're angling at.
Yeah.
That takes a very different form when you become a founder
Agree.
itself. Simply because it's very, it's just the personal part is just too much.
Yeah.
And you're right about people who get a grant or some sort of funding. They will automatically behave differently because dard kam hoga. That's
Exactly.
that's the reality of it. I was very open with my expenditure before, of course, um, because I was getting a monthly paycheck to keep my mouth
Exactly.
shut, right?
Exactly.
But now the first thing I did was looking at all the subscriptions that I had unnecessarily.
Budgeting for the first time.
Budgeting for the first time, the extra coffee have being had
Exactly.
outside,
Exactly.
all that extra bilawajay, like frills and
The
fancies.
fluff.
Yeah, exactly. And in any case, I've done this after COVID, right? So, COVID taught us how to,
That's correct.
and you slim down, right? Get rid
That's
of
correct.
all the fat. So now I'm like totally like conjuice and miserly right now. And I'm in that stage of mind. Uh, and um, and you do it by choice, strangely.
Agree.
You don't mind doing it. And don't expect yourself to have that kind of a mindset in a corporate job. It's
Yeah.
not the reality of it. It's okay,
Yeah.
to think it that way. Um, Simply because the output that you have to give in an organization, that's the privilege or that's the fun side of being in a company, right?
Agree. Agree.
It's a But we know it's a drug. the
Yeah.
the the benefit in always doing your own thing will be, what if this turns into something greater,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
That 5x, 10x, 100x, that
Opportunity
is
cost.
exactly. And that is what keeps you going. What if this becomes this big?
Yeah. Agreed.
Because you see the benefit in it.
Agreed.
um and I was discussing this with my husband that we were in IBA together. And in IBA, there was only focus on skill, but no focus on leadership. Nothing.
Yeah. Hmm.
um Basic, yeah, they would teach us how HR works,
Yeah.
how to
Agree.
manage your day, communication, but there was no focus on how do you actually work with people with emotions, how do you work as
Agree.
a leader. And there was no discussion around the ethics of a leader and how do you stay authentic around it.
Agree. Agree.
And I think that's where I find it quite interesting also, where Brene Brown, in her book Dare to Lead, she ended up doing this whole research with different CEOs, people from the military, founders, whatnot, all the people who you could label as leaders in their own space. And they did some understanding of the benefit of vulnerability, courage as a leader. Um, and what they eventually came down to, that the trait that was common amongst all these leaders was them holding on to one or two values that they had in times of crisis.
Got it. Yeah.
And usually when we do that values based
Yeah.
exercise in companies, it's very superficial, it's at a surface level. We really don't know how to practice it. We'll put things like family,
Yeah.
integrity, you know, growth, some stuff like that, right?
Agree.
But what does it actually mean? And um, in the coaching that I've started focusing on is with founders is that first do the value based leadership framework, which helps them to kind of pin it down. But then, if you are faced with challenge X, then how would you use your value to solve
Mhm.
that challenge? And why would it matter to you?
So I have an interesting observation that I think, again, this is just based on what I've seen in the last 2 years.
Mm,
Um, Companies that are growing have just started, and I think when you're, I probably use like a 40 employee as a benchmark, very rough benchmark. Till you're about 40 employees or below, right? I think the founder generally, again, and generally does not have time for anything people related. The
mm,
core focus is about growing the business, right? Whether I have
mm,
5 employees, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, I would say 30 to 40 is that benchmark,
mm,
where whether you have an HR policy, are you an amazingly, empathetic leader? If you are, that's fantastic, but generally the leaders don't have time, right?
mm,
And again, I would say whether it's your own business, whether you have money from somebody, whatever it is, I think you are just fighting so many battles as a founder, right? Because you're doing product as well, you're doing sales, and you're doing marketing as well, thinking about partnerships as well. You also need people to do the business, to maybe do that tech piece. That I think the people agenda or maybe the personal leadership brand, at least in the beginning, takes backstage. It takes a backseat basically, right? It's only when you have now, like, even if I think about myself, I've got like 5 or 7 people in the team now. um, yes, I mean, I try to be, coming from HR, of course, if I don't practice what I preach, then I should throw away my career. uh, but I think I realize that I'm being pulled in like 17 different directions, right? And so I can just extrapolate that if you have a product and you have somebody else's money and you have to bring it to the market, you're not really thinking a lot about leadership. You're just like, I want to get the product in the market because, again, from a personal perspective, your goodwill, your brand name is on the line as well, right? You want to be
mm,
successful. And I
mm,
think to that extent, leadership sometimes takes a batch. It doesn't mean you're not a leader, but like all the leadership traits that we think about, right? Oh, what a great, fantastic leader. I think it does take a little bit of a backseat to an extent.
mm,
Whether it's fair or not, I don't know, right? I don't have information. I don't know, what your thoughts are, but it is reality. I think once your company is at a stage where you have other very capable people to take that burden off you, I think that's
mm,
where you could probably have time and space to think a little bit more about your own style as well, right? And I'll divide
mm,
this into the what and the how. I think the focus is very much on the what, pretty much, in the first, whatever you want to call it. It's only when you take a breather and then maybe you start getting feedback from your stakeholders. Okay, maybe that's not right, or all of that, and maybe you think about how is it that you want to further develop this business.
mm. I want to kind of challenge that a bit also. Because what I can't assume is that you have to wait to become a leader. Eventually, the company gets big, right?
Agree?
Um, and I think the usually when we think of leader, we think of somebody who has people to lead.
Yep.
So then we think of team complexities related to that. I want my one-on-one, I want my discussions, my growth opportunities, blah, blah, blah. And that's where the time starts getting
Yeah.
crunched, right? Um, I think what I've understood so far is the first thing is um, anybody who wants to be a founder will not have a choice but to lead right from the beginning. That's what
Fair
it
enough.
is,
Yeah,
right?
fair enough. Absolutely.
Um, and which will include decision making. Decision making will be the decision will be the output, but how you choose to take the decision will showcase your leadership skill. How you
Agree.
choose to hire the people or the type of people you hire will be your leadership skill,
Agree.
and also an interpretation of the values that you stand for, and eventually the culture that you're going to create in the company, right?
Fair enough. Yep. Absolutely. Makes
So the
sense.
then I would say that for founders, don't worry too much about what is my leadership style.
Yeah.
The only basic level thing is have a bit of self-awareness of what is the most important thing for you. How do you want to reflect it in your organization, and what will you do to protect it? That is
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And then, the signals that you will send in your organization within and to the outside world will be a reflection of what type of a leader you might be.
Yep. Fair enough.
Yeah. So the the part where we should focus on our learning and a bit of education is, we end up reading all these books of people who have already made it, right? That's
Yeah.
the way that's how books are written, once you've made it. But I think focus a lot of energy on those initial few chapters of what were they going through and how decisions were being made.
Yeah.
They made those decisions and what regrets they have in hindsight. And the reality is that you are going to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
And the only thing you can do for a team when you're expanding and you have like 10 people in there, they're new to you, they don't know you, you have a certain vision, but maybe it's in your head, it's not that clear for them, all those things might be there, is showcase your vulnerability um, as much as you can in the form of honesty, transparency. I don't know this, you tell me how to do it. Because then that is what will make you courageous in front of those
Yeah.
10, 5 to 10 people that you have in the company. So I get what you're saying, Sajjad. And yes, hence leadership does take a backseat, simply because the priorities are very different, you
Yeah,
know.
agree. Absolutely, absolutely. I think one call out I want to share, and this is purely from an HR perspective. I have a few clients who are startups as well, and because especially in the area that I work in, which is especially around, in total rewards, we think about both the structure itself, which is the foundation of the building, but then the optics, like, think about a building. I think I've given this example before. The structure is what we work on, right? The steel and the stones, and then the bean bags and all of these things. Fancy free lunches come later, right? I think there is a very fundamental aspect of managing people that a lot of founders overlook in the beginning. I don't blame them because obviously they are trying to build a business, but I think that people aspect is something that I think if founders, especially in the beginning part, if they pay a little bit more attention, I think it could help. I'll give you a simple example, right? Again, coming from my area, a high percentage of startups unfortunately close down because they have massively inflated their people cost. This is one
Hmm.
perspective, right? You need people, right? Especially when money is not yours, it's easy to throw because you're like, I want the best tech head. I don't care
Hmm.
how much it costs, just get me. And you end up paying two, three, four times, and rightly so, because a good tech head will be like, I don't know who you are. I've never heard of
Hmm.
you. What product do you have,
Hmm.
right? And you're desperate, so you're like, okay, well, the only thing I can do is to throw 5x and to get this person in, and then, right? You can't do this for every person coming in, right? So I think what you have to do is very conscious effort in terms of understanding that people side of things, balancing the cost, how you let people go, how you hire. I'll give you another example. In fact, this conversation I've had with multiple founders. The first thing they said, "Oh, I'm quite stressed. Somebody is leaving. My three people are leaving in the company. Like generally losing people for them is like a huge deal, right?" And I'm like, so if they're leaving, so what? What's the problem? So like, no, I'll have to go and hire and everything. And I'm like, okay, is it an issue for you to hire from the market?
Hmm.
And they're like, no. Then I'm like, then what's the problem, right?
Hmm.
Uh, People will always leave, right? It's part of any job you do, and it's part of any company. What you should worry about is that if your ability to hire from the market goes down, right, for
Hmm.
certain people or certain skill set, that's where you should be a little bit concerned. So if you have somebody in the company who has a set of skill set which is really hard to find in the market, right, then you should also make sure that you differentiate that skill set in your company as well. right?
Mm,
And you
mm,
figured out a way to take care of balancing and maintaining that skill set, which obviously and this again comes from a people practice perspective, right? When we think about succession planning and skills and competencies,
mm,
point being that I think that people aspect as you're building is massively overlooked. And I
mm,
also use this example for larger businesses as well. I can give you countless companies name who are massive, who do really well and have absolutely horrible people practices, uh, and the term I use is what got you here may not take you forward, because you might have grown, and we've seen examples, big names where just right place, right time, right opportunity, and capitalize, and you grew. But businesses ultimately run on people, not products, right? People come
mm,
first. And I think I have so many countless examples where businesses who did not decide to do the right thing by the people ended up really suffering in the end, one way or the other. So I think my call out is that as founders, and I'm linking this to leadership style, whatever leadership style you have, how you manage people and how you get the best out of them can at the end of the day make or break your business.
And they say it that this way as well. In the same book, Ben Horowitz says that you should focus on the people, the product, and then profit in that order only.
That's correct.
Um,
Absolutely.
because without that, fine, you have a semblance of an idea, but
Yeah,
it's ultimately the people, especially when you start expanding
that's correct.
itself, right? Um, and in your mind, what is the usual, most common financial oversight you've seen that these new entrepreneurs they end up making?
I think it's the lack of understanding of employment cost, to be honest, right? We only think about salaries generally, like even us as employees, we only think about salaries. But
Mm,
a business has to pay on benefits, it has to pay bonuses, it spends time on training, spends time on travel, it spends time on engagement activities, right? There are the more obvious, what we call employment related costs. And then we have what we call the cost of operations, right? If I'm going to take my team out to lunch, once a month, and I'm going to do an engagement activity, and I'm going to have a fancy office, and I'm going to, send, my people on training. These are all indirect costs that nobody thinks about, right? And I think that employment cost as a basis, especially. And the other example I'll give you is like, especially coming from my area where I want leaders to be completely okay if their employees get an amazing job and they have to let them go rather than countering an offer and say, okay, I'm going to pay you, I'm going to match, I can't let you go. I'm going to increase the salary by whatever, 30, 40, 50%. You can't afford that. You should not do that. Like I said, unless it's a skill set, okay, it's going to take you 6 months to fill. I understand. Okay, you need that. But if you have even 10 people, I think you can easily let go five, six, seven of them, right?
mm,
Again, coming back to the fact that you can easily hire from the market.
mm,
That whole aspect of employment cost is something that companies and founders should understand from the beginning, because you take any business in the world, right? Your employment cost is either the number one or the number two cost of the business.
mm,
You cannot joke around with that. You cannot play with that. You should understand as a founder what that cost is for you, what's that as a percentage of revenue, right? And you should take very conscious effort to always keep an eye on that. So give you
mm,
more like what's happening right now with in this world. I'm seeing and again, I have a few people who understand this world better. They're like, one of the reasons why startups are not getting money is because they can't show profitability, right?
mm,
Like I
mm,
said previously, it was easy to get money. Now, a lot of investors are saying, show me profitability. In fact, some of the larger companies that have gone public, right? Stock has crashed because they were very far from profitability, right? So the reality is profitability has a direct impact, or the employment cost has a direct impact on profitability, right? If you can take control of that from the beginning of the business, right? I think you give yourself a higher chance of long-term sustainability and success.
I guess in the especially in the funded world of startups, um, you're young, you ended up you did an amazing pitch, you got a lot of money. We're talking dollars, not rupees. And you feel that you're the next Zuckerberg or whoever. And that ends up giving you a very false perception of reality.
Agree.
Because that money that they gave you, you need to earn it in order to be successful. It's just that you end up getting it up front, so you think I've earned it, but you haven't earned anything. Somebody's actually taken a bet on you. That's what's happened.
That's correct.
And that's a mindset issue. So you end up then putting money on very expensive resources, people. And I hate the bean bags. I hate them. It really bothers me. I don't know why. I think it's a cliche. um so that's another mindset that you get into itself. What is it then? Because this is a very human thing, Sajjad. Somebody gives you tons of money, you're like, what do I do with it? Like, how can you be responsible and disciplined on that front?
Yeah. I think this is where a little bit of experience can be helpful, in the sense that if you're very young, right? Um, just out of college, maybe, you haven't really worked or you've always had your own business. I think there
Mm,
are a few things which I strongly feel you only learn when you work in a corporate environment. Like I'll give you a few terms that I strongly believe in, governance,
mm,
compliance, structure, standards, processes,
mm.
right? You and I, before we think about
Young
anything,
people will young people will be going, ah.
yeah, I know. But I think there's a reason, right, why corporates also have these in place.
Yeah,
There are massive and strong governance processes, compliance and structures and policies and processes because they're there for a reason, right? You
yeah,
you you can't run a 30,000 employee business, right, in multiple markets if you don't have corporate governance or strong compliance or these structures and policies in place. And companies have grown over a period of time based on these structures and standards, right? You
mm,
might get lucky, you might grow, like I said, no problem, right? But it will come to a point where, and I can definitely, without taking names, I know of two of the largest tech companies, where I know that they've grown really amazingly, but it came to a point where you're like, okay, we need the structure now.
mm,
They just can't move forward, right? And I
mm,
think that aspect where, um, if you had experience, if you worked in an environment, in a corporate environment where you've seen the value of that structure, of those processes, and having the proper compliance and governance things in place, I think like I said, all of these things are there to help you sustain in the long term, right?
yes, yes,
Short term, you might just, I might just grow without having any policy, or any
yeah,
process, but it will come to a point where not having them is going to become a big pain for my business, you
yeah,
know
yeah, yeah,
especially as you start to engage with more, outside external parties. You need these in place. So I think the point I'm trying to make is that if I was just out of college, I would not know what this is, and I don't blame them. Of course, they don't, right?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's where, if you get money, then I also think that you probably should get a really, really trustworthy and smart mentor, right?
mm,
You're amazing in your business, right? Or get a coach, right? Uh, you might have an amazing idea, you have amazing team. I actually had this other startup there. They were all like 22, 23-year-old kids, and I was just basically coaching them, right? uh, Amazing potential, right? But the good thing was they realized they needed a coach or a mentor in different things. So for people, I was helping them. For business, somebody else was helping them. So don't assume just because you got a lot of money or you have an amazing idea, it's all hunky dory. No. I think there is a lot of, I think we undervalue experience sometimes,
yeah,
and there is no alternate for that. And I would say that if you, and so I can tell you my example right now, because yes, I have corporate, but I'm just 2 years in now in this new job, right? And my own perceptions and thinking has changed drastically, 3 or 4 times in the last 2 years, right? Because I'm learning in this new thing. So what I'm trying to do is also get mentors and coaches in this line that can help me. So I would say it doesn't matter what you are, what age you are, or what product or service you're working on. I think getting coaches and mentors, I think, can be a real, real help.
yeah. And I think what I appreciate about all the people who have made it, whenever they um tell people about their story, they always mention with a lot of humility the type of support and the type of coaches they ended up getting to get
Absolutely.
them through it. And I think that's where a bit of humility on the part of a founder is needed.
Yeah.
Obviously, um, along with that, patience and perseverance will come in very
Yeah.
handy also. But that humility is needed to be okay with not having all the answers, be being okay with reaching out and looking for support. um, but of course, choose somebody who you trust and respect. The respect part is very important in this case, because you're going to be very vulnerable in front of them, so that becomes quite crucial.
Yeah.
um, but tell me one thing, Sajjad, that's kind of, I don't know how to reconcile it in my head also, is that starting off something is obviously very different from scaling it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree.
Now, you can't really, when you're starting, there's a lot of passion in it. Um, you want to go in, you want to make it big.
Yeah.
People end up having those big, hairy, audacious goals itself, and they really want to make it big.
Yeah.
Now, us people like us who, it's not like I mean, I can't, I'll say it for myself, it's not like I'm the number one coach of the world and a hugely successful, hopefully, inshallah, one day.
Absolutely.
But when people like us, when you say, "Acha, listen, cautious,
Yeah.
calm down,
Yeah.
check your passion," it is a bit demotivating for them because they come from a place of
Just absolutely stop talking to them, firstly.
so how do
um,
you reconcile it, for them?
I think passion is a non-negotiable in this job, right? Um, because God forbid, if you don't work, if it doesn't work out, at least you gave your passion a chance, right? Which I think maybe people like us, we are blessed and fortunate that we have been able to take that, spot, because maybe financially we could take that risk. There would be, I would say, millions of people who would really like to follow their passion, but they're not in a space or in a situation where they can actually just leave a job or whatever you want to call it and just jump into what they want to do and follow their passion. So I would say, I think if you and I decide to, and I think we both can definitely say that we're in this because we're very passionate about whatever we're doing, right? Hopefully we make it, inshallah, whenever. But I think passion is a non-negotiable. I think the other thing, and again, this is an observation, there are people who don't want to make it big. They want to do their own thing, but in that limited capacity, and they're very happy,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And so I think
mm,
you have to ask yourself, what is it that's going to make you happy? Right?
mm,
You are you looking, because you like we talked about the opportunity cost, right? You think that, okay, I'm making $100,000 in a job, but if I do my own thing, right, I could still make 300,000 just doing my own, right?
yeah.
But you could be like, no, I'm looking at $30 million, because I think that's what I want to go. So I think passion is number one, and the second, you have to ask yourself, what is it that you're trying to do, right? uh how do you link that passion to your end game? Is your end game to give yourself more flexibility and obviously be makes a little bit more money, or your end game is that you want to be on Forbes front page or something like that, right? You want to
Yeah.
disrupt the market or whatever it is. So I think you have to I think founder has to ask themselves what they want. I definitely feel, and I met a few
Mm,
people who are very comfortable, just doing what they're doing. They don't have, doesn't have to be massively big, but they're very happy doing within that own space as well, and that's fantastic for them, because if that meets their need and their goals, that's absolutely amazing.
true. I mean, that's kind of the story of a lot of businesses in Pakistan, for example,
Yeah,
where the state is very happy in their
yeah,
own little kingdom, and their
yeah,
product might have all the potential in the world, but they kind of just stay in their thing. And eventually, it's somebody from the next generation that comes in and says that, "Dad, come on, snap out of it. You can do better."
exactly.
um, and then we see them expanding.
Yeah,
So that is very true also. One thing I want to also mention, we just have like I think 10 more minutes left.
yeah,
um, I was a marketer, you're an HR person, that's our background, right?
yeah.
But one thing that I regret not completely getting my hands dirty in is sales.
Okay. Yeah.
um and that is something, especially if you're a career marketer in a very glossy organization, um and people can look up on our LinkedIn to know which glossy organization we're talking about. um we come from a place of telling the salespeople,
Yeah.
that this is our product,
Yeah.
figure it out and sell it, and then they have to do the grunt work. But when you're doing your own thing, guys, don't underestimate learning sales. And what I
Absolutely.
mean about is, in the beginning, you will get it wrong multiple times, because what you want to say and what you're saying, there will be a huge gap in
Absolutely.
terms of your voice and your pitch and your tonality. You don't want to be pushy. You want to
Agreed.
play it cool, but you desperately want the business, but you can't show you're desperate. And that's such a big, it's
Yes.
just,
It's a tussle.
it's
Yeah.
really
It's a constant tussle.
exhausting. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's exhausting. You feel defeated, and you're like, and you realize people are ghosting you. All those things will happen, guys.
Absolutely.
Uh, so just be mentally prepared. But then you get opportunities also out of it. And the first time, I think after, I don't know, 10 years, when Sajjad, you and I reconnected, yeah, we mentioned this, that if you don't do A, B, you won't get X, Y, Z. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
you have to do random things to eventually get to something, but that random thing might not have any connection to the
Yeah.
eventual success, right? I don't know.
I mean,
What do you think?
every founder is a salesman. Every CEO is a salesman ultimately, right? Um, so I think, yes, I think sales is a very strong part of it. And if you think about like two perspective, there are people who are natural born salesmen, right?
Hmm.
You don't have to give them a degree. You give them a product and they will go and they sell. It's just natural there. Some people are not, unfortunately. I think if you are one of those people and you find success, because I think I also feel as human beings, we are naturally, we incline towards certain kind of people, right?
Hmm.
So if you're lucky enough as a founder where your sales instinct or skill set is very strong, good for you. Definitely, I'm not one of them, right? So I think you have to realize how much you can push yourself and where you need help, right? Obviously, we have head of sales for a reason because
Yeah.
that's us that's an expertise in itself, right? So either you get your own head of sales or you think about partnerships, right? So if you know that you and again this is there's no single equation that works, right? What product you have and what service you have and what market you are in and what's the stage, and there's so many dependencies. But ultimately, if you don't think you're doing a good job or you can't be a salesman because you realize that you don't have that skill set and you never will, find somebody who will do it for you or find a
Yes.
partner who is really good at that, right? um,
Yes.
it is a lonely journey, but I think it becomes easier when you look for people who want to partner with you. And I generally feel, and this is a very optimistic view I have now after 2 years, that I think generally people want to help and there
Hmm.
are always lots of opportunities. You have to be open to opportunities. Um,
Hmm.
and you have to also work with people who complement your skills, right? So the expertise I have is in my area, but I don't
Hmm.
know anything about marketing apart from the definitions or about sales or about product development, and that's where I think you need the right people uh, to work with to hopefully have a better chance of being successful.
Perfect. Must be harder, no? As an HR person. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, HR does not do sales, HR does not do marketing. And then we get abuses from pretty much everybody in the company, so it's fantastic.
because we were the products for you guys.
Exactly. So you always blamed us.
Exactly.
No, but yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I think passion is not compromisable. I mean, if you believe in something, you have to, yeah, and but it's relentless. Like I said, it's not for everybody. I would definitely say.
Yeah, yeah. So I think my takeaway from this conversation is essentially that if you're right now doing a 9 to 9, I would say, in a corporate organization, remember that any organization, it's a completely different organization when it's in startup stage. It's a completely different organization which is when it's in a scalable stage, and it's a totally different organization when it's in a sustainable stage. And when we were doing our corporate jobs, we were in the
Yeah,
sustainable stage of the organization. It was a mature company, and we were just doing it as
yeah,
part of it. So just be very conscious of it, that it's not going to be the same, and it will be inconsistent. It's
yeah,
meant to be inconsistent.
yeah. And one maybe I'll get your thoughts on this as well as a closing statement. I think people who have, I would say, in a very subjective way, a decent job
Hmm.
don't undervalue the value of a decent job, right? If you are being paid reasonably okay and you enjoy what you do and you get to do relatively what you want to do and it's a good company and culture and team you work with, I think it's massively undervalued, because I think uh, if you get decent pay at a job for what you're worth, and like I said, we talked about, you talked about the bubble that you have surrounding you, pretty much 80% of things now that I have to take care of. When I was in my job, I didn't have to worry about those. I think we massively undervalue that sometimes. So unless it's like unless you have a very strong reason to get into it, of course opportunity is there. But I think we should I think people who have good jobs and good companies should be really grateful for what they have.
Hmm. Agreed. Agreed. Be grateful, but you're not stuck
Yeah,
also. In
absolutely.
the, if
Absolutely.
you want to change, I would say that when you're hitting that stage of your career where every day feels the same, start looking for those indicators. When
Yeah.
every day feels the same, and when look at the type of conversations are bringing down your energy and the type of conversations that are bringing up your energy, that's where the idea will be sitting for your next future business venture.
Yeah. Sounds good. Cool, Sadaf. Thank you so much for that awesome conversation. I know this is the second one. I'm looking forward to the third one already. You asked really very, very specific and unique questions, which I have not come across in my 20 years. So I really enjoyed. Maybe because I think you come from a non-HR background, so I think there's a very different perspective that I. Tanveer, do we have any questions on LinkedIn so far?
I just checked a minute ago. We don't.
Okay, all right, no worries then. That's perfect. Sadaf, any closing thoughts before we close?
Not really. I think I said what I said. What the only bit will be is that guys don't have to read too many self-help books to become a founder. Um, um, there's one I want to tell everybody to read, which is a bit strange one, is Robert Greene's book about 48 Laws of Power. It's controversial because it gives you the dark side of leadership. I'm not saying follow it. I'm just saying be aware of it.
Good reminder for founders.
Yes, good reminder for founders.
All right, on that, we'll close. Thanks, Sadaf, so much. Awesome as always. And look forward to the next one.
Bye
All
bye,
right,
guys.
take care. Thanks. Bye.